Hey, strong people, Kalle Beck here, bringing you another Strong Talk podcast. This week's guest is Nick Shaw of Renaissance Periodization. We're starting off 2018. Happy New Year to everyone. And, a lot of people have a lot of goals going into the new year. And I think probably the number one goal is to get in better shape, whatever that means for you. So I thought it would be a fitting time to put out this podcast with Nick Shaw of Renaissance Periodization, most popular known for the Renaissance diet and their diet templates. And we kind of go into that, some, how to structure a good diet, how, RP, as it's known, can help you. And, just some general tips on how to, best approach eating for performance, some, thoughts on some of the popular diets right now, and just how to set yourself up for success. And you can of course go to renaissanceperiodization.com, check out their diet templates, click the banners at startingstrongman.com/sponsors for all of all of the people that help with this show. You can check out store.startingstrongman.com for all of your strongman training needs. You can sign up at patreon.com/startingstrongman to become a supporting member and help bring more of these shows. If you want to sign up for one-on-one coaching with myself or or some of our other coaches, that's all available at store.startingstrongman.com. And our training templates, use the code STRONGTALK to get programming for the sport of strongman delivered to you for just $10.55 a month. Can't really beat that. And without further ado, enjoy this week's episode with Nick Shaw of Renaissance Periodization. Nick Shaw, welcome to Strong Talk. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and just a little background, Nick Shaw. You're a co-founder, I believe, of Renaissance Periodization. One of the resources I've always followed and used myself as far as diet and training. Just in general, and I've applied it to strongman and used it with some of my clients as well. And I want to get a little bit of background on that, but I remember I became aware because I worked with Chad Wesley Smith and Juggernaut for a while, and then you guys started working with them, and that's kind of where we connected. And it's fun how everything kind of goes together, and you meet all these people in the industry. That's where I became aware of you. So going back, how did first just give a little bit of background on like what Renaissance Periodization does, and then we can kind of go into how it started.
Yeah, sure. So basically, in a nutshell, what RP is an evidence-based approach to diet and training. So really, no matter what your goal is, whether it's performance, sports nutrition, or if it's just eating for general health and losing fat, any of that good stuff, it's pretty much a way to get like a system in place to pretty much lay out what you need to eat, and how much and when and all that stuff, because there's just so much, misinformation out there in the nutrition section, industry, whatever you want to call it, that, it's just, you'll literally hear everything. Some people say, oh, well, you can't eat protein, you gotta go vegan, you can't eat meats or anything like that. And other people say, oh, well, you gotta go high carb, flexible dieting if it fits your macros. And then other people like, oh, no, you gotta go super low carb, high fat, paleo, keto, things like that. And so it's kind of just taking an approach of looking at it and being like, all right, well, what does science really say? What's it lay out? And then, of course, that's going to shift a little bit based on someone's goals. For example, if we were talking about someone that just wants to lose weight and kind of get in better health, say someone like, I don't know, if all the strong men and women listening, someone like your parents, or, they may not compete or anything at all. They don't really care about performance or stuff. They just want to be healthy and, add a good weight and stuff like that. So, the recommendations for them is going to be a little bit different than someone, say, pro strongman or national level strongman, something like that. So really it's just kind of a way to break things down and look at it in terms of, hey, what's going to work the best, and where does science kind of point us? And so that was kind of in a nutshell, what started Dr. Mike Israetel and I to start RP, and then that was something like well over 5 years ago. We started as personal trainers in New York City, and we kind of started out writing diet and training programs for some close friends and family, and lo and behold, social media, and like you said, just kind of meeting various contacts along the way through Juggernaut and so and all that good stuff. We've kind of been able to grow into something I think's been pretty cool and a really fun ride.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And the way I kind of view, our Renaissance periodization, or as I think we're gonna, refer to it a lot as RP, because it gets
Right.
saying that over and over. I mean, I can barely,
Oh man, that's okay. I can barely say it, man.
I
So
can
that's
barely
fine.
spell it half the time. But is it kind of simplifies everything. And I remember reading the first, diet book you guys put out, and I was like, wow, this is very concise. And it was, for at least for me, it was an easy way to follow just general, rules and guidelines for, eating for performance, whether you're, bulking or cutting or maintaining or whatever. I think that's something that needs to be pointed out when you're saying, when it's say that you like write diet plans. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's for everyone's trying to lose weight.
Yeah, totally, man. And that kind of goes back to talking about different goals and stuff. So if you have someone that wants to gain weight, well, their diet's going to look something different than somebody that wants to lose weight. Or, if someone really is just focusing on maintaining and stuff, well, it's going to look a little bit different than it would if they're, trying to lose weight or gain weight. So yeah, it's just basically trying to develop a systematic way of eating for your goals. And no matter what those goals are, there is a way and there is a right way and hopefully a better way to go about it. And really that's kind of what we've all been about. And, you talked about that first book. It's called The Renaissance Diet. It's been out since October of 2014. So over 3 years. And that was kind of a pretty good game changer for us as it allowed us to start reaching a lot more people. And I think people really took notice because they read that book and they're just like, well, one, you got to give credit to Dr. Mike because he, super smart, but he also has a talent for taking things that can be complicated and presenting them in a manner that's pretty straightforward and easy to understand, like you said. And so people started reading that book and they're like, wait, that's it, and they're like, well, that all makes sense. And that's just been the biggest feedback that we've gotten, from that. And then later, when we developed the templates, but it's just like, all right, well, that just makes sense. Like it's just laid out in pretty easy to follow manner, and based on your goals or changing schedule or workouts, it's like, hey, there's a different option for you to follow, and so it's just it's been really cool to see along the way.
Yeah, you'd think putting out a diet book that simplifies it so much would be counterintuitive to being well received when a lot of the stuff put out previously is making it seem like there or and, we could probably go off on a whole tangent on all the documentaries out there on nutrition, which there's some pretty bad ones, but they try to make it where they pigeonhole everything so much into one little. If you this is the only way you're not going to get cancer by the age of 30 and be morbidly obese, they make it seem like. And there's so much dogma one way, but you're just very based on your goals and your workouts and whatever, vary it here. Apply approach, and it's such a simple format. You wouldn't think that it would be so well received, but it was, and I think that was kind of the jumping off point for RP. I I believe, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally, man. I mean, you nailed it. And again, I think the key is being able to present things, especially information, in a way that people can really understand and break down and comprehend pretty easily. And so, I mean, that was kind of the aim of it. And almost, I thought you were going to go a little bit different route when you said it's counterintuitive, but some people were like, "Well, you're kind of giving away all the secrets with the book," and then even more so later with the templates. And Dr. Mike and I have always been like, well, there really aren't any huge secrets, but if you want a secret, the secret is taking all of this and sort of sifting through all the BS out there, all the information, and sifting through and down into what you're left with is what actually works. and then presenting it in a way that is easy for people to understand and ultimately allows them to, stick to it. So you got to give people a little bit of flexibility here and there because, ultimately the goal of any diet is to get people to stick to it. So you don't want to, give people some preposterous plan that's impossible to, actually put into place because it's just not going to, do much good. So yeah, it's funny. People are like, "Oh, you're kind of giving away all the secrets." Well, it did the exact opposite. People read it, they saw it, kind of drew more people in, and then people are like, "Wow, like this is it. Like this is awesome." And it's just pretty easy and straightforward, and there you go.
Yeah, I feel like you could pretty much get what you need from the book and apply it, and just crunch the numbers yourself uh, to do everything like that the diet templates say.
Right.
To get, or even one-on-one coaching, the one-on-one services you guys provide. And, I've done similar stuff with myself where people go, well, you put out, so much free information. Why is anyone going to hire you? I'm like, well, because a lot of it's a time thing. People value their time. They
Right.
want some accountability, and like the templates deliver it in such a easier package than having to read an entire book, making notes, doing all the calculations yourself. Some people are like, okay, 100-ish bucks or whatever, it's all laid out right there for you. It's good to go. It's just it's the convenience is the
Yeah,
value.
totally, man. I mean, you nailed it. It's kind of one thing to have to read something and you can figure it out yourself. And absolutely, a lot of people have, and that's really cool to see because for what 20, 30 bucks, the price of an ebook, you can have something that helps you lay out your diet for pretty much no matter what your goal is. Like that's awesome. But a lot of people, they start to question themselves a little bit if they read it and they're like, oh, am I doing this right? Or, oh, maybe this doesn't seem quite right. Or like, almost this seems too simple. Like maybe there's more to it. And like you said, obviously the convenience time factor, you present something in a way that really just lays it all out. And honestly, when we created the templates, our goal was to take diet coaching, which is pretty expensive for most people. Not everyone can afford, five, six, seven, whatever, eight, 9,000, dollars
Mm-hmm.
for 3 to 6 months of coaching. Like a lot of people just can't do that. I know that Mike and I, when we were in college, we certainly couldn't have done it, but for $100 maybe, we would have definitely figured out some way to make that work. And that's kind of another factor into it. But yeah, it's people just like things right there, right in front of them, like no guesswork, just like, hey, here you go, here's what you do. And it's just like it's a blueprint. You follow it, and you have to alter it a little bit because it's a template. But like, here's everything for you, and there's specific phases and directions. And like, all right, well, if you stop losing weight, well, you just do this. You go to the next tab or whatever. It's just like it's all right there. All the information is right there for you. Very similar to what a one-on-one coach would provide, but at a sixth of the cost or whatever.
Yeah, and just a little bit, obviously less of the, you could say, hand holding or
Right.
accountability, or just that when you said people second guess, it's more
Mhm.
so than the book, but then there's still that thing of people get worried about that. That's where I feel a coach, even when I coach clients for training or whatever. That's where the value is that they have access to that person for time that
Absolutely. Yeah,
might
yeah,
be
totally,
lower.
man. The accountability is big for sure. And some people, they just kind of like to know a little bit more of,
Hmm.
the how or the why behind things. And, you have a PhD caliber coach, at RP kind of sitting there to answer all your questions. A lot of people do like that. And that's sort of like the premium tier. But, again, not everyone sort of wants that or needs that, or they kind of like doing things on their own. And that's what the templates are for.
Yeah. So going all the way back to you met, um, how did the infamous meeting of yourself and Dr. Israel happen?
I can I can recall it like it was almost yesterday. So it's been quite a while, man. We've known him for a really long time. I guess it was probably I don't know 10 years ago or so. And so we were both students at the University of Michigan. I think I was a sophomore, he was a senior, and we actually met in the weight room. Of course, we run a fitness company. Of
Of
course, we met in
course.
the weight room, right? But he was squatting 405, ass to grass, like perfect form. And remember, this is a college weight room, so and not even a good one. At Michigan, unfortunately, it's not very good facilities there for students. And so, usually all you see is bros doing curls and stuff. Certainly almost never squatting, let alone someone squatting that amount of weight. But here he was squatting 405, in some like ridiculous outfit. If you know Mike, he's always kind of dressed ridiculous or whatever. So there's this 5'6" guy, whatever, I forget how much he weighed then. Bald head, just squatting 405 for reps, just burying every single one. And me and my roommate at the time were like, what the heck? So we started chatting with him. He's like, hey, you guys like lifting? And of course, me and my buddy were just total meatheads, of course. And, he's like, hey, you should, try this powerlifting meet we're going to be doing in a few months. And I was like, all right. And that was kind of the start of everything. I got really hooked on it, and it was cool. He kind of gave me my first ever diet. And I remember because I wanted to gain weight. So again, this is 10 years ago. We obviously have changed our methodology a bit since then. But I remember the first things he ever told me, and I'm sure the strong men and women listening will appreciate this. But he's like, all right, so you want to gain weight? I'm like, yeah, totally. I'm like, I have a hard time gaining weight. All right, here's what you're going to do. I was still living in the dorms at Michigan. He's like, all right, each time you eat in the cafeteria, it's like for lunch and dinner, he's like, first thing you're going to do, go get soft serve ice cream and then eat your meal. And I was like, are you serious? He's like, oh yeah. And man, it was awesome because it was the first time I'd really ever eaten to, try to gain weight. And like all of my lifts in the gym, I kept adding weight and even adding sets. And like all my reps were matching, for like weeks at a time. I forget how long it was. Probably the first ever mesocycle we ran was probably way too long. But, like something like 8 weeks. My numbers just literally never went down because I just kept gaining weight, just eating everything in sight. It's obviously, of course, that's it's drawbacks too. But yeah, that was just that was kind of the very first, I guess, mass phase first diet I kind of ever really did in a structured manner. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's one of those things. You start seeing results, you start working really hard, and just kind of builds upon itself. And then lo and behold, you just kind of get hooked, and you know that if you do X, sort of Y is going to occur, and that's what kind of got both of us hooked, and figuring out what all those variables are and all that. So that was kind of the beginnings.
So yeah, everyone can shut it off now. Just eat a serving of soft serve ice cream with your regular meal plan, and you're going to get really strong.
Yeah, yeah,
Everything will keep
yeah, yeah.
improving. Um,
Man, I should say at the time, man, I think I probably started out at about a buck 70 or so,
uh-huh.
and I probably took that up to about 190, 195, something like
In
that.
eight
So,
weeks.
well, you know what? It was longer than that. I forget the exacts now. It's been so long, I guess. But that was kind of the rough, whatever timeline and something like that. So 8, 12 weeks, something like 15, 20
Uh,
pounds.
yeah, a short amount of time to gain, especially coming from 170. That's a good percentage of your body weight. I definitely had phases like that myself, and then you like look back and you're like, you're
Hmm.
thinking you're getting so big and jacked, and then you take that
Yeah.
one photo and you're like, holy, what have I done? Like,
Oh man, dude, you're preaching to the choir here. So just a little backstory. I'm um, I'm probably charitably about 5'9", and so I started in about, let's say, 2007, and a buck 70. I've been as heavy as 265.
wow.
Um, right now I kind of just walking around. Maintenance weight is about 215, which is pretty good spot for me. But I've kind of been highs and lows and everywhere in between. So there's definitely one of the biggest things we learned, sort of mistakes early on, and luckily this was well before we started having paid clients paying us. Is that yeah, we just gained weight too fast at the start, and yeah, you totally look back at it and you're like, oh man, I was way too heavy. You just gain weight too fast, and you just kind of get caught up because your strength numbers are going up, and you're like, wow, this is so cool. But if your goal is to be relatively lean, or even in strongman, there are weight classes and stuff. So the goal is to be relatively lean at a given weight or something. So eventually that fat's going to have to come off, and you kind of do yourself a disservice if you put it on too much too fast.
Yeah, because it's harder to get it off when you need to. You're kind of setting yourself for more work down the road. But is speaking on your personal lifting history. So is that when you got into powerlifting, was your kind of first foray into comp- competing in the kind of strength sports, bodybuilding, etc.
Yeah, totally. So it's a powerlifting meet down in Kentucky. So we drove from Michigan to Kentucky. That was the first ever meet I had done. I think I competed in the 181s. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun. I remember the first ever squat attempt I took in a meet. I was so amped up, had so much like adrenaline that I think I got one red light. I think the lift was still good. I may have missed it actually, the more I think about it. But I actually came up like too fast and like basically came up on my tippy toes and it basically did like like a calf raise and the judges were like, yeah, you can't do that. But yeah, for sure, man. It's just that competitive aspect, just competing and, I don't know about you, but it's just kind of the whole idea of lifting and diet and all that. It's just the whole process behind it that you can improve yourself and you can get better and there's sort of always something to be chasing, right? So no matter what lift you hit, say you hit a new PR, well, what's the next thing you're thinking about? Well, what's the next PR I can hit? Something like that. And that's kind of what led me into competitive lifting for the longest time. I haven't competed in a little while. Sort of slightly different priorities, two small kids, and RP has been growing really fast, so kind of taking a backseat. I still lift, of course. I still love lifting, always will, but maybe not quite as competitive as I used to.
Yeah, I think it's a similar phase for myself, and that's what is like. I raced motocross growing up, and I always thought it was fun. Like, I can get this new part, and I put a new exhaust on my bike. Now it shoots out of the hole faster. It puts
Right.
suspension. I could go over a jump a little bit better, but then I at a young age I always had a fascination with like cars and stuff like that, and trying to make them better. And then when I could apply that to myself, I'm like, oh, if I do this, I can perform better. I'm like, I'm
Right.
selling all that stuff. Like it's way cooler to kind of modify yourself in a way. It turns out that's hard to maintain that peak over 10 years or so, and
Right.
you do start to shift. And I think once you get where you're running a business off of it, that kind of turns into the competing, at least in my mind. Like, it's the same kind of focus. Like, I look at hitting PRs, like you had this much more website traffic,
Right. Right. Right.
sales went up this
To-
much.
yeah.
It's the same mindset, really. And that's what's great about lifting, is that self-improvement and doing things, and people notice it over time. You can apply that to other parts of your life, what I found in business, or you know whatever. Just
I think you nailed it 100%, man. And it's still that same competitive mindset. It just sort of shifts focus. And I would say I'm right there with you. And that sort of competitive spirit in nature is really fun when you start to apply it in the business setting, and you sort of like, I don't know, really any lifter, right? Any serious lifter, you just kind of have that obsessive personality, and so it's just like it's gonna fall somewhere, right? And it has to. So maybe it shifts a little bit from being only focused on PRs in the gym or something. Well, then it's just like you said, it shifts a little bit, and yeah, man, it's fun. Again, running a business is really hard, lots of long hours, all that stuff. But it's fun, right? And so I enjoy it and all that. So I wouldn't really complain, about the shifting focuses. And
mm-hmm.
I think you have a kid on the way as well, right?
Yep. April.
Yeah, yeah, very cool, man. Yeah, so I'm sure. I have two small kids. So my son's in kindergarten. My daughter's 3.5 or so. So it's one of those things where you kind of just shift priorities a little bit and all that. So yeah, I used to lift 6 times a week, every single week, and I think now I dropped it down to 5, so I can have the weekends off, so I can hang out with my kids a little bit more and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know. I obviously have a lot to learn and experience, with just having the one on the way. But pretty much the moment it happened, I could feel like the priority list in your mind really changed. You're like, oh, you have like a human that you're in charge of making sure it
Mhm.
like lives, and you're gonna have to try to raise into a decent member of society. So like,
Right, right,
it's
right.
like, so we're doing all the remodeling the nursery and getting everything ready, and it's been busy on top of everything. Plus, we just got through Thanksgiving, and it's today as we talk, it's like Cyber Monday. So when you run a a web-based store, that whole week
Totally, man.
is web-based business. It's really busy between newsletters. I'm sure you're doing all the same, and posts and stuff. It's kind of the biggest shopping week of the year for everyone. So, and then you have
Right.
like family coming over, and it's just like
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and everyone else is like, hey, I have the week off. But I wouldn't trade.
Dude, you nailed it, man. I mean, so my family's from Michigan. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina now,
Mm-hmm.
and so the last 3 years, my parents and my sister actually lives here close to us, but she's always over for Thanksgiving as well. In the last 3 years, starting in 2015, 2016, and now 2017 here, it's like I almost feel bad because I want to be like, yeah, it's Thanksgiving, it's great, all that stuff. But then, my family's here, but also, it's like you said, it literally is the busiest time of the year for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just funny because, I want to like hang out with my parents a little bit after my kids go down to bed, sit around, chat with them and stuff. So I'll do that for a while. And then it's like, everyone else is, all right, well, let's go to bed. And my wife and I are like, all right, well, guess what? Now it's time for us to go work for like 2 hours. And then, once it hits like midnight or 12:30, I'm like, okay, well then we'll go to bed. Then it's kind of, we're up whenever the kids are. So it is really hard, man. And it's like you said, trade-offs and priorities shift a little bit and all that stuff. So, I'm certainly not complaining. But yeah, it's not easy. I'll just say that.
No, it's just it's not complaining. It's not the reality. The benefit to it is we can take the middle of the day to just talk for an hour or so and try to impart some advice and whatever on people where you're not stuck at a normal job doing whatever someone else wants you to
Right.
do, which I wouldn't trade that for anything. But to get back to some of the the diet principles, when you come up with the the Renaissance diet ebook, laying everything out, then you try to apply that to then you apply that to an easier to follow template that's very clear cut. How what's the process of trying to make that information as because like I know I've put stuff out where in my mind it makes sense, but I've been doing this for this long where this might be like someone might barely know what like protein, fats, and carbs are that's going to read this. So
Mhm.
how do you simplify it and make it as easily digestible of a process? And I know you just come out with like a new version of the template, so it's obviously always improving. But what was the first start process like for that?
Yeah, totally. So in about 2014, end of 2014, early 2015, I kind of told Mike, I'm like, Mike, hey, look at how well this ebook is doing. I'm like, I think there's probably something there to the idea of creating some sort of template because at the time there was nothing like it. And so he's like, yeah, I can do that. And of course, we started out, like you said, coming from like the juggernaut, powerlifting, weightlifting, even like strongman type background. So a lot of people were already used to dieting. They were athletes, competing in various stuff, and so like that was our main market. And so the first templates were, geared more towards that. And then, you just kind of get feedback and you see what people think and all that stuff. And then slowly over like the next year or so, we got tons of feedback, tons of result. People, kept seeing, like, what are these RP diet templates people are talking about? I'm like, what are all these before and afters out there? Because like I see RP before and afters everywhere on the internet, and which comes largely from the templates. And, we just kind of took all that feedback and started to tweak it a little bit to kind of make things a little bit easier to understand. And that kind of even led into the most recent update that we did, and that we sort of totally changed the design and layout of the templates, so
Mm-hmm.
they're a lot prettier. I can say this now because we have very pretty looking templates. The only complaint I really ever saw people have about the 2.0 templates, and again, these are responsible for the vast majority of the transformations on RP Transformations Instagram page, was that they were just not super user friendly. Um, and again, it's just like you sort of take that feedback and then you enhance it a little bit, and now we've sort of done that, and so now I think we kind of have like this really pretty looking product that of course is still going to get people really good results. And I'm just really fascinated to see how they'll do. And again, starting back in 2014 when we were really heavily focused on like just sports nutrition and performance, now we've started to grow a little bit and get more into a bit more general population folks. And I'm really curious to see how these will do with something like that. And even to branch off of that, like you said, how do you kind of make things easier to understand? Well, we even created a simplified version of the templates just for like, I always kind of give my parents as an example. They don't really lift or anything. They just want to be healthy and be at a good weight, and that's why I've created a slightly different version of the templates called the Healthy Diet Templates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more like for general population instead of sports performance.
Yeah, total. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for the listeners, we were talking about the actual products, but just to kind of explain, the scientific, proven things that, methods that, and then results. What are just some of the base and the general guidelines that you use to apply? I think keep it to more performance based, because that's probably the
right. Yeah.
If someone's
totally.
listening to this, they probably compete or lift heavy, so that's
Totally.
their main goal, and probably to look decent doing it is always a secondary goal, no matter if people want to admit it or not.
Right, and there's nothing wrong with admitting that either. Like, guess what? I mean, it's probably going to, not all the time, of course, but probably going to have some benefits as well. If you sort of are a little bit leaner and all that stuff. Obviously, there's exceptions. Powerlifting. You probably want 15, 20 pounds of powerlifting bloat to go do a powerlifting meet or something like that, so you don't care. But in general, it's a pretty good idea to be lean, especially if your sport has weight classes. So kind of going back to Dr. Mike, he sort of came up with this pretty cool graphic visual called the nutritional priorities. And so I'll kind of touch on them pretty quick, nothing too crazy complicated or in depth. So basically the number one thing when it comes to dieting for performance or altering body composition, so whether you want to lose fat or gain muscle, sort of the overriding principle is consistency. Just like with training, if you take 3 months off of training, well, you can imagine you're not going to be as strong as you were when you were training. Same would apply to diet. If you kind of don't give a crap about your diet for several months, well, you can imagine that you may not get as good of results. So everything has to be based around consistency and giving people something that they can actually follow. So it needs to have some flexibility. Beyond that, the number one thing is going to be calorie balance. So if you want to gain weight, you got to be eating more than you're consuming. Or if you want to lose weight, you got to do the opposite, and you got to be eating a little bit less. And so that's really the foundation of it. So if you want to gain weight, you need to be adding in calories. If you want to lose weight, you need to be slowly taking calories out. Now, again, I give the caveat of doing it slowly because, again, with strength and performance, you don't want to just pull that stuff out too fast, or you can risk seeing a big drop in performance. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But once you get past calorie balance, it comes down to your macronutrient intake. So, how much protein, carbs, and fats do you need? Just some real quick hitters. Protein probably at about 1 gram per pound of body weight. It's a good starting point. Carbs really vary on sort of how much you train. And just real quick, carbs are a real hot topic, but when it comes to strength and performance, carbs are really important for performance, for keeping muscle, especially while dieting. So, a lot of people want to know about low carb stuff. Well, in strength and performance, it's not going to be ideal. So that's kind of quick hitters on macronutrients. Carbs are really important. So typically, if you want to cut calories, and you need to, typically we're going to cut fats first, just because they don't have as much to do with strength and performance and keeping muscle. So that's sort of macronutrients, and each one of these priorities is kind of assigned a rough percentage point of like how much it's going to be worth to your overall diet success. So calorie balance is about 50%. Macronutrients are about 30%. So right there is the bulk of it, 80%, 4/5. And you get up to the top, and it's some smaller details, things like nutrient timing. How many times a day do you eat? Generally speaking, if you're eating every 4 to 5 hours while you're awake, you're totally fine. So for most people, that's anywhere from like 3 to 6 meals a day. And then the second part of nutrient timing is actually, like timing what you eat around when you train. So in general, again, I'm keeping this pretty short and sweet. More carbs around when you train, and when you get further away from training, maybe carbs start to go down a little bit, and fats would be up a little bit because you don't want a ton of fats around training because fats kind of get in your system and they slow things down. So I always like to give the example: would you want to eat a bunch of pizza before you go and do your strongman lifts on the weekend? Like,
People do.
man,
It's
that's
crazy. Yeah, or I've had the when the guy brings a box of donuts to Strongman Saturday, it always seems like a good idea, but then we wonder why we're sitting around for an hour in between events, like
right. So yeah, it's like given I see the appeal of donuts because they do have a lot of carbs, but
sure.
man, they have a ton of fats. They have a
Exactly.
ton of fat in it, and so it's like it's probably not ideal. So why not have something, you know, I don't know, like a power. Well, maybe yeah, a power bar would be okay, or keep some Gatorade or something like that around, something that gets in your system really quick, versus something that's gonna, again, like you wouldn't want to have a bunch of fats or a bunch of fiber, right around training because that stuff just sort of sits in your system and almost kind of like bogs you down. So again, that's nutrient timing in a nutshell. And then at the very top, there's a couple smaller priorities like food composition, so like food quality. Things like saturated fats versus unsaturated, versus things like that, or incomplete versus complete sources of protein. Not sort of a huge deal either way. Um, and then of course the GI index of carbs. So, I mean, just generally speaking, again, like giving the example of Gatorade around training, that's going to be higher on the GI scale because you actually want things to get into your system pretty quick, around training. So that's the idea there. And then supplements, which of course, everyone sort of knows about supplements and all that. Just some real basics, whey protein, fast digesting around when you train. Casein protein is the exact opposite, so it's slow digesting. So maybe something like that before bedtime. Workout carbs, so literally something as easy as Gatorade, Powerade, you name it. Every supplement company has workout carbs now, I think. And then caffeine and creatine monohydrate. Those are some quick hitters there in terms of supplements. But that's kind of the nutritional priorities in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and that infographic's great, and I'll put it, in the show notes when I put this on the website, just so people
Perfect.
can
Yeah.
look up with that because seeing the graphic, it's pretty self-explanatory. It really sums it up, and it's just it. The thing that I've found with strength athletes, strongman, whatever, when they try to apply diet, is there's a big um, a lot of people kind of eat intuitively, which is fine if you've been doing this for a while. You kind of okay, I had about this, I had about that. But
Mm.
the problem I think with that is that when someone like I'll get the question, or someone will post it in the Facebook group all the time. They're like, "Hey, I've been struggling," and then you ask them what they're doing, and they don't have an answer.
Mm.
But meanwhile, they could shout out. They probably have an Excel sheet that's 20 pages long with every PR they've hit on every single lift, so they know how to track their progress on there. And I tell them, I'm like, what if you never counted the plates that you're putting on the bar when you went to deadlift, and you just like, or the reps or anything, and you just went out and lifted some random bar all the time and just did it haphazardly, and how you did it? There's no measure to see what you've been doing, and how to adjust it from there. Where, with the templates, you don't it's not like you count calories, but you have a specific amount of each macronutrient per meal that adds up. So it's a different way to monitor how it's doing, and then the fats kind of go down as you get further into the cutting templates, to oversimplify it. So you have variables, and you have a metric to track and go off of to adjust. And like you said, it's a template, so you might, some people, like for me, I found like if I'm eating that much protein, it was a lot for my body weight. Like I could do a little bit less. So there's little things like that, but I think
Sure. Right.
it's an important thing for just people to kind of know what you're doing in order to be able to know what you should do next to have better success.
Yeah, totally, man. And when you give people the training analogies, I think it makes it a lot more sense for people, especially people that are really serious about lifting. Because it's, yeah, well, okay, you intuitively eat. Okay, do you go in and intuitively train? You just say you show up and you're like, oh, you know what? Today I'm gonna hit bench press 3 by 6. It's just what I'm feeling.
Sure.
I'm gonna do some curls, bro. Like most people don't do that. I mean, some might, but it's obviously not ideal. The exact same thing applies to diet. You can eat intuitively. Um, Let me tell you this: if you want to eat intuitively, what do you want to eat most of the time? It's kind of like whatever, right? You're not going to be super regimented. You're like, oh, I want to eat intuitively. Okay, well, I'm going to go eat like Burger King today because, well, I feel like it. Again, like that's okay, but if you start being a little bit more serious about it, it's just like you said. You would track your progress, you would track your PRs, you would track your sets and reps and volume and all that. Same thing applies to diet.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to do that, like imagine how serious you are about training. Well, imagine if you gave half of that effort into your diet and gave so oh hey, you know what? Guess what? I have my 4 hour workout tomorrow. So guess what? In the morning, I'm going to have a pretty decent sized meal with a lot of carbs. I'm going to take a training shake with me today because I know, well, instead of feeling like dog crap in the second half of that workout because I don't eat or drink anything during, I'm going to take some, Gatorade powder and mix some whey protein in it. And well, guess what? Now I started having that. And, now instead of feeling like crap at the end of my workouts, I'm still able to hit PRs and stuff or, have enough energy to sort of push through, what's prescribed that I need to do training. And, again, when you give training analogies, I think it just makes so much sense. And so whenever I do a seminar, I try to break things down like that for people too, because a lot of times, just doing seminars at CrossFit gyms, you start giving people CrossFit training analogies, and it makes a lot more sense in how to relate diet to folks.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's always the key to get something to stick with them is you gotta explain it in ways that they're gonna understand and relate to. I've found, and you guys do a great job of that. As far you touched on carbs and keto for performance. Just to delve more into that because that's such a hot topic these days. The keto thing just keeps popping up every time I listen. I'm listening to whatever. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it always brought up, and it's just pretty much like they make it seem like you can't eat a jelly bean for the rest of your life is the only way to kind of have performance and health and all this. But I think I look personally as everything like a tool, and it has a time and a place and a way to use it, and it's going to be different for everyone. But I don't see why you'd completely just throw one of those things out the window when it can. It's probably one of the most abused macronutrient as far as to go out there. But how do you use carbs and kind of combat like the not to put in different camps, but the whole keto for performance that's going around?
Yeah, so a lot to say on that topic, of course. So, like you said, there's different approaches. Most things are going to work at sort of different times for different people, and it kind of depends on your goals for the most part. So, I'll give a good example. If you have someone that doesn't work out and they are interested in losing weight and they want to lose weight pretty fast,
Mm-hmm.
keto is probably a good approach, for your general population people. And I tell you what, man, so I've kind of been in this game for a while now, and I've seen a lot of things, heard a lot of things, interacted with a lot of clients. And so here's what I've gathered. People want something that's simple. And it is my sort of opinion that a diet that just tells you not to eat X is simple.
Yeah.
Do you follow me there?
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this makes sense, but this is something I've really been thinking about lately, the last several months, probably most of this year, and kind of just trying to figure out like why are these fad diets and all this stuff so popular? Well, you need to have something that's simple for people to follow if you want the masses to follow it. But simple diets get simple results. So what does that mean? If you want to do something that diet says, hey, don't eat X, totally fine. Probably going to get fairly simple results. If you want these incredible transformations where people gain 30 pounds in all their lifts and they lose 15 pounds of body fat and gain a pound or two of muscle, now obviously there's exceptions to all these rules, so I'm just speaking in sort of general terms here, it's going to require a bit more thought in resources, just like a training program would. Again, give people analogies that relate back to training, and it makes a lot more sense. Sure, you can go program if you want, for someone just starting out lifting or whatever, or even more advanced people sometimes do this. They just need something simple and generic to follow. So you give them, I don't know, like 5x5 or something. And they're like, wow, okay, this works really great. And that's okay, but it's probably going to give fairly simple results, which is cool if that's what you want. But if you really want to get more serious about it, it's going to require a bit more thinking and, resources and things like that. And, that's where periodization comes into play and all that. So anyways, that's kind of a long-winded answer to the whole keto thing. But yeah, there's certainly times when it can be applied and can be very effective. And in terms of performance for, short explosive things, weightlifting, even, CrossFit, strongman, of course, powerlifting, all that stuff, it's probably not going to be the best thing you can do. It's not going to be optimal. Can it be used? Sure, it can. The best analogy I ever heard was Dr. Mike one time on Facebook says, it would be like taking a lawnmower engine and putting it in your car. Now, you're a car guy. What's going to happen if you put a lawnmower engine in your car?
Yeah, it depends on the lawnmower engine, but
Yeah,
they
right.
race those too. But yeah, no, I totally get it. It's gonna, you'll be a little underpowered. It'll maybe still get down the road depending on everything, but
Right. Exactly.
it's not made for it.
It's not, yeah, it's not ideal. So you can do it, but it's just not ideal. Now, the interesting stuff that I don't personally know all that much about, I would defer to people much smarter than myself, is you start getting into more endurance stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Especially things past like the marathon level.
Yeah,
Is
ultra
keto a way
runs.
to go there? Yeah, yeah, totally. All this ultra marathon stuff, which is, crazy. Of course, we're all crazy that are into training anyway. It's just various levels of training, of course. Um, that's something really interesting. Could that be a good approach? It could certainly be, and it's not something I really know all that much about or, have much expertise in, so I'm not really going to comment there. But again, going back to strength sports, it just seems to be not ideal. And again, people want results now, right? We live in society where if you want something, you want it now. Thank you, Amazon Prime or whatever. And by the way, I love Amazon Prime. Anything you want to order can be at your door basically the next day. Same goes with diet and training, right? People, they don't want to take a year to put in the work to get, X result. They want it in 3 months or a month, or shoot, a lot of people want it tomorrow. Keto. So if you're looking to lose weight, man, you drop those carbs, you lose a lot of weight at the start. I gotta assume that's pretty motivating for a lot of people looking to lose weight. Drop those carbs, all of a sudden, maybe the next week you're down 5 or 10 pounds. Wow, that seems really cool. Generally speaking, it's tough to stick to in the longer term, something like that. But again, I think it's just kind of a combination of all those things. So keto can certainly have its place, and I'd be really interested to hear more. And ironically, I was so at RP we do some research grants, and we gave one to Auburn University, and I got to go down there to their kinesiology building and lab with Dr. Mike Roberts, who's a really well respected guy in sort of the science fields and all that. Done a ton of studies and all that, and I was really picking his brain on keto and stuff because they did a study on a group of CrossFitters and all that. And so I was really kind of curious to hear his feedback. Of course, it's just one study, so it's hard to draw too much from it. But, it's something interesting to think about. But the vast majority of sport nutrition literature is going to steer you away from keto for sport performance, and especially in, anaerobic stuff like lifting. So kind of long story short, it's probably not ideal, but it certainly could have its place without a doubt.
And I think a lot of it comes back to the hardest part about dieting is not, looking at the science for people. It's the psychological part.
Totally, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I know with myself, like for me, when I prepare all my meals for the next day, and then it's like, okay, this is what I eat. It's a lot easier when you get that choice, and you have to make that minute decision. It's a lot harder. But the same thing with a diet where you just take something away. If then it's easy because it limited your choices. So it's like, okay, I
Absolutely.
can't eat all this thing. It's the same reason why, paleo or whatever worked well. It's like, well, I can't eat pretty much anything processed or,
Yep.
simple carbs. And the only carb sources I can have is like sweet potatoes and fruit. It limits it a lot more. So it's
Less
yeah, there's
thinking
less
involved
thinking.
simplifies it. Yep.
Yeah,
Now, actually, there's a huge benefit to that, right? Because it allows people to sort of get going. So if you're just starting out, are those okay approaches? Yeah, totally, right? Because most people starting out don't want to hop, they don't want to go 0 to 60 right away. They want to kind of get their feet wet. And so going back to the nutritional priorities, it's like, well, if you focus on calorie balance and getting your macros about right, that's the vast majority of the way there. And it's like, if you have someone that's new to strongman, they've sort of never done it before, just like in dieting, they come in, and they're like, "Hey, man, train me up." Or like, are you going to have them doing the events on day one, or like, are you going to teach them proper squat form and stuff so they know how to move first?
sure.
Well, yeah, you're going to start with the basics, right? Just like with dieting, you kind of get an idea of what your calorie intake needs to be, and then you sort of start to modify that a bit here and there, and you don't get caught up in when you need to eat and all that stuff when you're just starting out. And it's the same with training, right? You sort of master the basics and get to the more advanced stuff later on.
Yeah, totally. It's like it's the same analogy where people start worrying about supplements,
Mm-hmm.
and they go and they blow a whole paycheck at whatever supplement store because they're gonna start a diet and a training program. The same thing with training is they'll be asking me, what kind of
Shoes.
wrist wrap. Yeah,
Yeah.
shoes is the perfect one. Oh my god, the
Yeah.
shoes for this, shoes for that. It's still
Yeah.
one of the one of the first articles I wrote for that reason because it was the question I get all the time because there's so many different events and in strongman is they ask about what shoes when they don't know how to breathe or brace properly yet. They don't
Right.
have body awareness. Like you need to, not to be mean to anyone, but if you haven't done like an athletic thing in 2 decades, it takes a while just to get your mobility right, just to get your body prepared to do like a yoke walk or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just strengthening and putting some good motor, certain areas and putting some good motor functions together. So yeah, it's the exact same thing. And I always tell them like, I've seen strongmen that won national titles with a pair of, Chuck Taylors where a toe's sticking out the side and a cheap pair of
Yep.
basketball shorts that fell off when they did stone loads. And the contest T-shirt, no knee sleeves, no nothing. Of course, those things have their place and they help, and we we're a distributor for them. So but I can't tell you that I get emails all the time, people asking me about stuff, and I steer them away from buying certain products just because there's better uses of their money. Um, but yeah,
Totally. Yeah.
is
It's all
keep
about
it
trade-offs. Yeah.
keep it simple,
Mm-hmm.
and go from there. I feel like in strongman, I want to kind of the last things to end this is there's the as far as diet goes, there's obviously the person who wants to bulk, and most people we kind of touched on some of the downsides to bulking too quickly earlier. Of course, there's the massive probably no easier way to gain strength than to be in a high caloric surplus.
100%. Yeah.
But so there's those benefits as well. But um, the people I see are either people that want to drop weight to be in a more competitive weight class,
Yep.
because the difference between say powerlifting and weightlifting and strongman is that the weights are set for you, and they're generally lighter in a lighter weight class. So you might have a newer person come in and be like, okay, well, to do this sport at all, I'd have to drop weight. So then I always tell them that puts them in a hard predicament because now they probably still do need to get stronger, um, but now they're looking to drop, even 15, 20, even like 30 pounds sometimes to get there. It's
Right.
kind of hard to do both at the same time. So let's take that first example. What are some of the like the basic advice you'd give someone that wants to, probably trim up? They're probably a little, their body fat range, could come down, I'm sure, and they want to drop 15, 20 pounds, get in a lower weight class.
Yeah. So a couple tips. One, it's like you said, if you're trying to aim for a competition, you have a lot of weight to cut. It's just not going to be ideal, right? Because in an ideal world, here's the deal. If you know you need to cut weight, plan to do it as far ahead from a competition as you can.
Absolutely.
So let's say you give yourself some wiggle room of a couple months, maybe even at least a month, so you can get to that weight and then just maintain it. Because guess what? I'm sure, as you know, if you drop 20 pounds, your leverages shift, especially if you're wearing a belt or anything like that. That's going to feel a heck of a lot different. So if you're planning on, going and doing your first competition and all of a sudden you've lost 20 pounds in the last few months, you may show up at the competition and you're like, holy crap, like it's just, no one, you don't even know, you're not even prepared for it. And so, generally, I would even tell people, again, if it's your first competition, like, why are you even cutting? Just go and show up and just go, lift and have fun, sort of get your feet wet a little bit. And, then when you start to become more competitive, then you can worry about cutting. What do you think of that?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much exactly what I tell people to do. It's
Yeah.
like with the contest that I personally host, the first couple of years, we'd have like novice classes that would have like lightweight,
Mhm.
heavyweight, etc. And I just completely did away with I don't with the weight classes in novice for that reason. You have people that they're trying to come into it, and then they end up worrying about the weight cut, and
Mhm.
sometimes they see people like myself or someone else who has gotten the dehydration part of cutting weight down pretty good over time, and they think they can do that when they might be within a year of lifting, and that's not ideal at all. It could be dangerous, honestly. um, so yeah, I tell them, if for your first contest you shouldn't cut. I'd rather someone just go out and if they're within like 5 pounds,
Sure. Yeah,
even
there's of
eight
course
eight pounds
exceptions
a
to the
bigger
rule.
guy. But if you're, I think, like over 5% of the
Mhm.
weight, it's probably best to just kind of just eat at maintenance. The style of training, stuff like yokes and heavy stone loads and everything is very taxing. It takes a lot to recover from, so you're probably going to be craving a lot more food than normal if you've never done
Yeah,
it.
for
Um,
sure.
so yeah, just show up, even if you're going to do worse, or maybe the next contest, because it's too heavy, you just kind of train like you're going to do it, and then maybe skip that one and go to the next one. Um, when I cut weight, when they announced that they're going to have like an Arnold World Championship for 175s, and I'd been competing at 200, 231. I'm like, okay, I know I want to do that. I started as soon as it was announced, and I set
Yep.
a contest. I think I set like the first, and I started dieting, even though I was going to compete at 200 in a contest in like 3 months from that. Then I still dieted by then. I dropped the first 12 pounds or so from like 210 down to in like maybe low 190s, maybe a little more. Some of it was like bloat from a contest, so I was it really was like from 200. um, but then I set then a practice contest before like the Arnold qualifier that I went and did, which was my first weight cut, and it didn't go well. I still won that contest, but it it came down to the last event, and it was, I could tell it affected me because it was, I wasn't used to it, and I wanted to, and I learned from there. So I pretty much took like a year long approach, um, from for that to be my goal to compete in that next weight class, and with little steps in between. And I learned I was a lot stronger once I had maintained being around, the 184 ish range,
Yep.
184, mid 180s, to do that. Because my leverage has changed. Like some lifts went down, some lifts went up, and it was interesting. But yeah, once I had like a solid couple months maintaining that weight, it was a lot easier, even just to cut. The water, um, and yeah, you got to give yourself time. I'll get coaching inquiries, and people say they have a contest in 8 weeks and they have 16 pounds to lose, and I'm like, no, we're not doing that. it's,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's just not going to happen. The other person that I think I get asked a lot of questions are is, a lot of people, they do that first approach, like they do the bulking approach, and like you said, you've been up to 260. They might get well over 300 pounds. Very heavy. They got pretty strong because of it. They might they're probably a somewhat bigger guy in general.
Hmm.
Then they get there, and you've developed so many bad eating habits getting there that then dieting's hard for them, and you kind of it's the mental part. And I talk to, who's a lot of the time my co-host on the podcast, Mike Battolino, who actually followed the RP templates, and he lost 60 pounds in a year. Again, took a year-long approach to cutting to 231 from
Right.
heavyweight. And he said so. He said that he was worried that he'd get weak, like he's going to lose all his strength. So, they've gotten big. They're probably, unhealthy. It's regardless if it's muscle or fat, it's not healthy to carry around a higher body weight. And you start to kind of notice those things as you get older. They're known as being the big strong guy, but they're a lot of the time they're worried that it's really going to affect their lifts. How would you have someone like that start out, and some advice for them?
Slow and controlled approach. So no one, especially in strength sports, wants to lose strength. So again, it goes back to giving yourself enough time, planning for more in the long term versus just the short term, which is really hard for a lot of people, especially when you want instant results. Again, give yourself plenty of time, and again, go about it nice and slow and controlled. And if you're losing, 1% of your body weight a week, something like that. So for most people, it's going to be around in the 1 to 2 pound range. Now, obviously, if you're heavier, maybe it's a little bit closer to two,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even a little bit over. But if you're, a lighter person, 1 pound a week is totally cool to lose. And, what's the benefit of that? Well, you don't have to cut super aggressively, which means strength and performance is very likely not going to go down and suffer. And for strength sports, that's kind of what we're all after, right? So again, it's just thinking more long term, giving yourself plenty of time, and then going about it slow and controlled. And then usually another thing that goes with that is not having to cut your carbs, very much, if at all. Now, obviously, depending on the person and genetics and all that stuff, they may have to cut them towards the end to achieve their desired, goal, whatever weight it is. But typically, the longer you can keep carbs in your diet and relatively high, well, again, it all goes back to performance, strength. Performance is going to be higher in the gym, which is what we're after.
Yeah, I do you find if someone like that, like they've gotten, even like over 30% body fat, that uh, they get to a point where they can't really handle carbs very well?
I don't know if I'd say that, but again, when you start getting people that have a pretty high body fat percentage, I think it's important to base your calculations off of lean body mass instead of
Mm-hmm.
total body weight. So if you have someone that's 300 pounds, but they're 40% body fat or even 30%, well, that's like it's like 200 lbm.
Sure.
And so it's like, well, do you need to be eating the amount of carbs for a 300-pound person if you only have lean body mass of someone for 200? Well, probably not. There's a difference between, someone like Brian Shaw, who, like, who was he weigh, like 400 plus, but he's,
Maybe he's gotten up in probably the mid fours.
man, that's
He's kind
crazy.
of secretive about it, but I'd say he's been 450. You know, but yeah,
Right.
but
But
he's
he's
also
like,
his lean body mass has to be
yeah,
well over
yeah,
300 pounds. So
for sure. And that's what I was getting at. There's a difference between that, with an LBM of, high 200s or even 300,
yeah,
which is just insane to think about. I'm
yeah,
just
no
picturing
kidding.
that now. It's just absolutely mind blowing. Versus, someone that's 300 pounds but doesn't have very good body composition. So, it's some things like that. Interesting enough to your question about the carb intake and all that. So generally, if you do want to mass, there's a good reason to probably do it from a leaner starting point, because there could be some insulin sensitivity stuff there that could make you gain more fat as opposed to more muscle when you're gaining weight if you start from not being as lean. So there's probably something to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, really appreciate it. I think the one last question that I like that people ask is, they said, if yourself and Mike Israetel were to compete in a strongman contest, and they said open weight, so there's no weight class shenanigans. This is the jungle. There's no weight classes. What do you, how do you think it would go? And like, do you think there's like specific events that you could, you might have the advantage in over hit, over
Right,
Mike
right,
and
right.
vice versa.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So, just for frame of reference, I'm about 5'9", 215 or so. Mike is 5'6", about 240, 245. So he's about as wide as he is tall. He kind of comes from a powerlifting and bodybuilding background, and so he's getting into bodybuilding. Here's the deal: anything on brute strength, he's going to kick my butt because he outweighs me by 30 pounds and is 3 inches shorter. Anything that requires maybe a bit more athleticism, I might stand a chance with that. So it would depend on what the events are, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it going. Yeah, he was like, he looked like Stumpy Reigns out there who competed in the early.
Exactly.
He's almost got that look going. He's just a little too tall and not quite big enough yet. I think Stumpy was like 5'4", 260 when he competed
Oh,
at World's Strongest Man.
oh
Um,
man, yeah, yeah, for sure.
you could tell where his name came from. But yeah, I think that's about how I'd see it. And of course, if we want to go through the RP staff, then Mike Caruso's clear
Yeah,
favorite in the
yeah,
strongman contest.
yeah, for sure. So, just a quick background there. One of our coaches, so PhD, Dr. Mike Caruso, former pro strongman, competed at World's Strongest Man, I think a couple times,
I think
right?
twice, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, twice sounds right. So, he's one of our coaches, and he's obviously a super smart guy, and he's been 300 plus, one of the strongest overhead pressers in the world. Now I think he's kind of dialed it back down. I think he may, he's pretty lean now, from what I recall from chatting with him recently. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's, looking, like what a lot of those guys do when they kind of get done competing. They take some time and they diet down, they become a little bit healthier weight, and it's obviously good for the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was always lean by strongman standards, but
Right.
now he's just lean and still probably over 250, I'd imagine.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
He's a big guy. Yeah, I did a joint. We both were speakers at a seminar a couple of years back, and he did a whole slideshow going through every year of World's Strongest Man and who won and breaking down their training style, and it was pretty interesting. I think it was a little too much for a lot of people watching, but like for me, I enjoyed it because people were like, Jesus, like, all right, and in '77, this guy won. He trained like this. This was his best lifts. And it was like, and he's kind of talking about the correlations and everything. And it was a. I told him he should put that slide together as like a little book or something. Just the amount of information he put in. I think he put it together just for that seminar, which is crazy. That's a lot of work and research. So you can tell the kind of detail he'd put into his own training
I,
plans and coaching.
for
I
sure.
think it would be,
Absolutely. Mhm.
top notch. But I don't want to take up too much of your time. I really appreciate you coming on today. Everything RP strength. Obviously, we talked about the different products and services you guys, recommend what that you offer. If listeners want to go check out more, what's the best place to do it at?
Yeah, so a couple places. So our website, www.renaissanceperiodization.com, or if that's too hard to spell, which it is for even myself, rpstrength.com. And then how most people know of us is through Instagram. So at rpstrength. Shameless plug there to give us a follow. I think there's a little bit of humor and some educational stuff and sort of a mix of everything that I think people enjoy. But yeah, so we have ebooks, and then we have templates, and we have one-on-one coaching, and even RP Plus membership site, which is something that's growing pretty good. So yeah, sort of I like to think of it as something for everyone. Just want a little education, you got ebooks. If you want something a bit more advanced, we have templates, and if you really want kind of the top of the line, we have someone like Mike Caruso who could coach you, who's pro strongman and PhD. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a quick note, you sell, the training templates as well as diet templates. Like, like I think doing something like some of the physique templates could be a good off-season move for a lot of strongmen. Get away from the event training. I've been considering doing something like that myself. Just get in there, gain some muscle, train just with some barbells and dumbbells, etc. for a bit. It
Mm-hmm.
always is always good for the joints, especially like right now. We just wrapped up amateur nationals, the official strongman games, which is also world's strongest man for every weight class but the heavyweights and the women, and people are doing that within a month of each other. It's a couple breaks after doing stuff like that would do some good from the heavy lifting and event training. But again, I want to thank you for coming on, Nick Shaw, and hope you have a rest of your day. Again, follow him at RP Strength and rpstrength.com. I'm Kalle Beck with the Strong Talk Podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.